For young pilots like Joseph Huba, flying the hump was a terrifying prospect for a host of reasons. And one of the chief challenges was their own aircraft. The C-46 had been rushed from assembly lines to frontline service in the CBI. But not all the bugs had been ironed out.
The giant Curtiss Commando goes belly-whopping for 50 feet.
These bugs added to the myriad of dangers for young pilots.
You basically took a brand new aircraft, put it in the hands of an inexperienced pilot and said, go fly over the Himalayas. And technologically, a lot of the aircraft hadn't been designed necessarily for that type of punishment. You were being tossed around at the whim of the air currents that are coming off of the Himalayas. You can't see the ground. You don't have a GPS. You've got a paper map. And at the end of the day, you know, the aircraft it's still propeller-driven piece of aluminum. Not only are you just trying to survive the winds and the rain and the snow, you were also trying to not get shot out of the sky by the Japanese.
Enemy interception, particularly from the important air base at Myitkyina, denied them a direct line and forced them north over a much higher route. They flew across jungles, through mist and fog, over mountains, often at heights of over 20,000 feet, with the menace of Japanese planes ever present.
The route became so scattered with downed American aircraft, pilots said they could navigate their way back to base following the aluminum trail.
The risk of dying over the hump was statistically pretty close, if not worse, than flying a bomber over Germany.
These were the facts of life for those risking their lives to create the air bridge. As Bill read the file on his missing uncle, the stark realities of his life at war and his disappearance were clear.
What I received was a standard file that they create when somebody is deceased in the military. It talked about the details of my uncle's last flight. It talked about the actual date and time of the loss, the actual physical location of the loss, where it was suspected to be.
The existence of this information was a revelation.
It was exciting to see literally X marks the spot. Here's the aircraft.
After a lifetime of questions, Bill finally had what he needed to begin the search for his uncle's plane. But traveling to the remote jungles of Burma, now Myanmar, was a risky proposition.
It's full of tigers, it's full of elephants, it's hostile, there's smugglers. You don't go to somewhere like that alone. I absolutely had to have someone to go with, but it had to be the right person.
It was once again in his career as an FBI agent that he would find the help in the form of a potential partner.
I like to push myself. I like to get to the edge of civilization, the edge of what I know, and just leap. That's part of what drew me to a career in the CIA. There was a mystery, and it felt like a duty to find what happened to Bill's uncle. It's still out there, missing in action.
So with another qualified mind on the case, it was time to ramp up the investigation, and it all hinged on the details in the file.
They found the plane, but that was like my eureka moment, that if somebody had actually been able to pinpoint the plane, then why hadn't somebody done a recovery? I wanted to know why they couldn't do a recovery, and what was there to stop me from going. So.
Myanmar's 260,000 square miles is the size of Texas. And with almost 50% of the country covered in jungles strewn with wrecks from the war, it was essential to find out exactly how accurate the X was.
We were losing about a plane a day just from weather and mechanical failure over the Himalayas. 300 of those planes, they were able to identify some remains from the air. But all we had to plan getting to that X, to the plane, was a latitude and longitude coordinate from 1945. So I actually went through all the research and plotted all those plane wrecks. So with that data, I was at least able to say, well, if it's on this mountain, at least we're not looking at 10 different wrecks. We're only looking at one, maybe two. That was how I tried to give myself a little more confidence that we were on the right track.
But challenges remained in traveling to a country that had been closed to Americans for decades and riven with internal strife.
Perfect moment in 2014 arrived when The central government signed a peace treaty with the Kachin state rebels. And because of that peace treaty, we were the first foreigners to be there in years.
The timing was right, but Ben and Bill had no idea if they would find the answers they were looking for.
The smell of adventure was enough to get me excited, but then there was always Bill's reverence for the story too, that showed me that this is not just an adventure, this is a personal quest.
It was the quest of a lifetime. It took years of preparation, but two men, a retired FBI agent and a former CIA case officer, put their lives at risk to travel to a war-torn region and search for answers to a 75-year-old family mystery.
We had to fly into the capital, Yangon, Rangoon, formerly known, fly north to a town called Myitkyina. Then we had to hire a truck and head into the Golden Triangle, infamous drug trafficking area, on the Lido Road, which was a road built by the Americans in World War II.
Finally, they were at the end of the line, the last vestige of civilization before the jungle.
That was where, the immensity of the difficulty began to dawn on us.
I call it the kickoff, the town closest to the plane. And with that, it was just blind faith and random strangers we hired the day before to take us 30 miles into the jungle to this X that we didn't know it was there.
It was easily the most dangerous and most difficult thing I've ever done.
I'm an Eagle Scout, I'm CIA trained, I've done enough trekking in my life to feel comfortable with pain, and this was exhausting and beat me more than I could have ever prepared for. I mean, just the first half a day, we were absolutely beat and blistered and, just didn't know how much further we could go and then we went 4 more days of that.
After hiking 4 days into the jungle, Ben and Bill were on the edge of exhaustion. But there was no respite in the final push.
All we have is a GPS coordinate, and we've plugged that into our GPS unit. Following the compass, the GPS is right there where my finger is. That information told us we were in the right area. We find that X stand at 00, it's supposed to be right here, and it's nowhere to be found. And even if we were off by 150 feet, it would be hard to find because the jungle is so dense, the terrain is so steep, you'll never find it. So you got to call off the search.
It was tremendously frustrating, but I knew at that point that I'd reached my physical limitation.
It was soul crushing, you invest so much emotionally into the experience, into finding the plane, and to be so close. And the failure of it going home, completely exhausted and in pain, was just really heartbreaking.
They made it back to safety, defeated. But Ben hadn't entirely given up.
While we're resting and licking our wounds over the next few months, I hired the guides to go back. They went back out, they collected more data, and came back with pictures of a plane.
In 2018, they finally got the break they had been looking for.
That's it, no doubt about it. As soon as we got the information, and the confirmation was indisputable, we're on. The wheel turned again, and it was all about trying to recreate another trip.
The team was headed back to the scene of a bitter disappointment.
We're back.
This time, they had to try and put things right.
Our travel pattern was a little bit different this time. It turns out that in the years that we were gone, the infrastructure had improved. They had cut a new road through the jungle. So we flew to Mandalay. From there, we took a flight to a little town called Kamti.
Made it so far. Slowly but surely, we're getting there.
And there, we took another 2-day Jeep trek through windy roads.
And now we're high-centered. I could have seen that coming from a mile away. I did see it coming.
Into another little village, which is kind of the end of the line.
We made it past the checkpoint, and we're thrilled. We were worried we'd get turned back, and so far, so good.
This time we had a fixer arranged in advance, part of the original search party who initially found the plane. He had found some old hunters who had been up to this mountain peak and who identified the plane.
Off into the jungle from here.
They were better prepared, but the jungle would be no more forgiving.
From there, we had another 3-day hike. We were a lot closer this time, but it was steeper right out of the gate. The elevation changes were insane, climbing from 1,500 feet down to 600 feet, up to 5,000 feet, down to 3, up to 8,000 feet, down to 6, up to, and it just kept going on like that.
Yeah, I'm out of breath.
We knew what to expect, and it still wasn't any easier.
During the hump operation, over 600 planes and over 1,000 crewmen were lost, and Bill was now keenly aware of what Joseph Huba had faced out there. Even if Joseph had survived his crash, the harsh realities on the ground meant rescue was unlikely.
If you fly over that portion of the world, it's a sea of green. It's completely unfriendly territory. There's no way you're going to be able to put an aircraft down there and survive. But I think that they realized that every time they got into that aircraft, it was a roll of the dice.
Getting close to the descent on the far side, on the eastern side, where our plane should be located. Bill? Wow. Oh, you're stepping on a wing here, a tail wing here, something. Holy moly.
The circumstances are right out of Indiana Jones. You know, you're on a trail, bam, there's this piece of, 1940s technology stuck on the side of the mountain. It's amazing.
Oh, man.
The plane had nosedived right into the side of the mountain. To see it with your own eyes is incredible. This thing felt like it crashed yesterday. And we are looking now for evidence for remains of potential bodies, of things that might explain whatever happened to Bill's uncle.
This would be the cockpit, all smashed to pieces.
And you're looking at history. You're looking at World War II. You're transported 75 years into the past, and you're imagining what it's like to fly to your death, to be there, and to have to, to be there and to have to jump out because your life is on the line.
Some landing gear.
Talking to the folks from Silhigh, they were able to clue me into different veteran groups, and in one case I was able to actually identify an individual who had actually flown with my uncle on several missions. He was a wonderful individual. He says, your uncle stopped by the tower to look at the schedule to see when we were next flying, and while he was in the tower, the pilot of the lost aircraft said to my uncle, hey, my co-pilot just ducked out, do you mind, are you available? My uncle said, sure, I'll fly with you. My uncle wasn't supposed to be on that aircraft. He discussed being in the tower and listening on the radio, to the transmissions from the airplane in which my uncle was the co-pilot. And he said, we knew they were lost. We knew they were in trouble. And, I basically listened to the whole thing live while it happened.
On the night of the fateful flight, Joseph's plane had flown miles off course. Lost and unable to make it back to base, their fuel exhausted, the plane crashed into the jungle